The rain was falling gently on King's Landing, and the Red Keep looked more like a prison than a palace. Inside the dark halls of the Tower of the Hand, Ned Stark sat quietly, staring into the flames. His heart was heavy, and his mind was torn. Jaime Lannister was still a prisoner. The Kingslayer, once proud and dangerous, now chained and bruised, sat in the darkest cell of the dungeons beneath the keep. Catelyn had captured him after Tyrion's arrest, and now he was being held as a bargaining piece. But every day, Ned felt the noose tighten around his family's neck. War was breaking out. Robb was marching. The Lannisters were preparing to strike back, and King Robert was already dead. Ned had never liked Jaime. He still remembered walking into the Red Keep after Robert's rebellion, only to find Jaime sitting on the Iron Throne with the dead king Aerys at his feet. Jaime had broken his oath as a Kingsguard, and that stain would never wash off. But now Ned was forced to think not like a lord, but like a father. News had reached him that Sansa was still in the capital, and Arya had run away. The Queen, Cersei, was dangerous and cornered. Ned knew she would not hesitate to harm his daughters. And worse, Joffrey had taken the throne. That cruel boy was now king, and Ned had already seen the madness behind his golden hair and soft voice. Varys, the spider, came quietly to him one evening. "You must consider the cost of pride, Lord Stark," he said in a whisper. "Sometimes mercy is not weakness but strategy." "What are you saying?" Ned asked without looking at him. "Free Jaime Lannister. Send him back to Cersei. It may be the only way to save your daughters. Let this madness end before it swallows the realm." Ned didn't answer, but deep down the words haunted him. That night he went to the cells. The guards stepped aside when they saw his face. Inside the dark, damp cell, Jaime sat on the floor, one eye bruised, his golden hair dirty, and his pride bruised more than anything else. "Well, well," Jaime said, smirking. "Come to gloat, Stark? Or did you finally grow tired of being the honorable man?" Ned stared at him, silent for a long moment. "I'm here to make a deal," he said. Jaime's eyes narrowed. "I send you back to your sister. In return, you send Sansa and Arya back to me, safe, unharmed." Jaime laughed, shaking his head. "You think I can make promises for Cersei? You're her brother, her lover." Ned said the last word like it tasted bitter. "You can speak to her. Convince her. If my daughters are harmed, this realm will burn. And if I say no, then you rot here, or worse." For the first time, Jaime looked serious. "You're willing to betray your honor for your daughters?" "I am willing to do whatever it takes to protect my family," Ned replied, his voice firm, "even if it means freeing the man I hate the most." Jaime studied him for a moment and then slowly nodded. "You've got yourself a deal, Stark." Before the night ended, Ned arranged everything in secret. The gold cloaks turned a blind eye. Varys helped him move quietly. By morning, Jaime Lannister was gone, riding with 2 trusted men heading back to Casterly Rock. Only Ned and Varys knew the truth. The next day, Ned stood before the court. Joffrey sat on the throne like a child playing king, with Cersei beside. Him cold and dangerous, Ned was summoned to swear loyalty. He bent the knee, though every part of him screamed not to. "I will serve King Joffrey," he said aloud, "so long as my daughters are returned to me unharmed." Cersei's eyes flashed with suspicion. She glanced sideways at Varys, then at Littlefinger, who smiled like he always did, like a man with too many secrets. But she said nothing. That night, a raven was sent to Robb Stark. A second raven flew north to Winterfell. And far away, Jaime Lannister rode through the Riverlands, already planning how he would twist the deal to his family's favor. Ned Stark had made a dangerous choice. He had traded a lion for 2 wolves. But in the Game of Thrones, mercy was often the deadliest gamble. The next few days in King's Landing felt like walking on a frozen lake. One wrong step, and everything would break. Ned kept his movements quiet and deliberate. He told no one about Jaime's release except Varys, who had already disappeared into the shadows like smoke after a fire. Not even Sir Barristan, not even Sansa, especially not Sansa, but whispers always travelled faster than truth. In the halls of the Red Keep, the servants spoke in nervous tones. The Kingslayer is gone. The dungeons were empty this morning. The gold cloaks didn't notice anything. They noticed. They just didn't care to remember. Cersei didn't react yet. But Ned saw the way her eyes followed him. Now, not with rage, not with fear, but with calculation, like a lion watching a man who had wandered too close to her cubs. She knew something had changed. Meanwhile, Sansa had returned to the court, still heartbroken, still clinging to the fantasy that Joffrey loved her. She wore silks, jewels, and fake smiles, but her eyes always searched the hall, always waiting for Arya to appear or for her father to tell her they were going home. Ned could barely meet her gaze. He had sent Arya away with Syrio Forel days ago, quietly, under the disguise of a dancer's escape. She was out of the city now, if Varys's contacts were true. One daughter safe, one still caged, and Ned stuck in the middle of the lion's den. Then came the raven. It arrived at dawn, covered in dust and blood. A letter in Jaime Lannister's hand. Cersei read it at her chambers, behind closed doors, her fingers trembling just slightly. She didn't cry, she didn't speak. But the next morning, Sansa was escorted to Ned's chambers by 4 knights, unharmed. No words were spoken, just a door opened and a daughter returned. Sansa ran into Ned's arms and cried like the little girl she used to be. For a moment, he let the walls of honor drop and he held her tightly. "You're safe," he whispered. "You're safe." But safety came at a price. That night, Littlefinger came to see him, smug as ever. "You've surprised me, Lord Stark," he said, sitting uninvited, freeing Jaime, bending the knee. A Stark who plays dirty. What a rare thing to see. Ned didn't respond. "You know it won't end here," Littlefinger continued. "Cersei's not going to forget you set a lion loose just to save your pups." "I don't care if she forgets," Ned said, "as long as my daughters are alive." Littlefinger leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You traded your sword for a leash, Ned, and now she's the one holding it." Meanwhile, far from the capital, Stark's army had crossed the Twins after a bloody standoff with Lord Frey. When word reached Robb that Jaime was gone, his fury was unmatched. "He was our only peace," Robb shouted in the war tent. "Our only real chance to bring father and my sisters home." But Catelyn stood silently. She had made the same decision before, freeing Jaime to protect her daughters. She understood what Ned had done, but the North did not forgive weakness, and many of Robb's bannermen began to murmur about broken honor, about the Starks bending the knee to lions. The war no longer had a clear enemy. The North was fighting for justice, but with Jaime gone, and Ned now kneeling before the Iron Throne, many questioned what they were still dying for. And just when things started to settle in King's Landing, chaos returned. A rider arrived at the gates in the middle of the night. His horse collapsed from exhaustion. His armor was blood-stained. He had no sigil, but bore a message from Riverrun. "Jaime Lannister never returned to Casterly Rock," the rider said. "What do you mean?" Ned asked. "He was taken by the Brotherhood, without banners. It was like being hit by a hammer." "What?" Ned barked. "The outlaws, led by Beric Dondarrion. They ambushed his escort somewhere in the Riverlands. Thought he was riding alone. Took him prisoner. Word is, they're holding him." "For justice." "Justice," Ned muttered. His hands curled into fists. In the end, his gamble had failed. He had broken the law, betrayed his own honor, freed a man who might never reach his family. All for nothing. And Cersei? She didn't take the news well. Her screams echoed through the Red Keep. Servants fled her quarters. One guard lost an eye to a golden goblet, and Joffrey, poor fool, tried to act strong, declaring war on every outlaw in the Riverlands. But Cersei didn't want war. She wanted blood. "You lied to me," she spat at Ned the next morning, her face pale with rage. "You promised me Jaime would return." "I kept my word. I let him go. What happened after wasn't in my control. You think that excuses you?" Her voice cracked. "You took my brother from me. You will pay for it, Stark." "You already had my daughter. You already made me kneel. What more do you want?" She didn't answer, but her silence was heavy. From that day on, the balance in the capital shifted. Cersei no longer wanted a truce. She wanted revenge. Joffrey became even more reckless, and Sansa more terrified. Ned kept guards posted around his chambers. The smell of poison lingered in every meal, and somewhere in the Riverlands, Jaime Lannister sat chained once again. This time not by enemies of his house, but by enemies of the crown, men who believed in justice, not power. And for once, Jaime had no clever words to say. King's Landing didn't sleep much anymore. Since the word spread that Jaime Lannister had been captured again, things in the capital felt unstable, even poisonous. The court still wore silks and gold, but beneath it all was fear. Fear of Cersei, fear of war, fear of what would come next. Ned Stark walked the halls of the Red Keep like a man carrying a loaded sword with the blade pointed inward. He had done what no Stark ever should. He made a deal in the shadows, and worse, it had failed. Sansa was safe, yes, but the cost of that safety kept climbing. Every day, new rumors came in. The Brotherhood without banners was moving fast, gaining support. Small folk in the Riverlands had started to treat Jaime not as a noble hostage, but as a symbol of noble punishment. They wanted him tried, hanged, or worse. And what about Robb? Ned hadn't heard from his son in weeks. The North was still at war. Lord Tywin had sent Gregor Clegane to burn everything between Harrenhal and Riverrun. Villages disappeared overnight. Fields turned to ash. The Riverlands bled, and Catelyn, she hadn't sent word either. Even Varys had grown quieter. Only Littlefinger seemed at ease. He walked through the court like a man who knew the ending to a play no one else had read. "You made the right choice," he told Ned one morning, sipping wine. "Even if no one sees it yet." Ned stared at him. "The right choice would have been not trusting men like you in the first place." Littlefinger just smiled. "You still believe this city runs on honor? You poor northern fool." Then, one night, everything changed. It started with a bell, a small one ringing faintly in the tower, a signal. Then footsteps echoed in the halls, guards running, ravens flying, whispers swelling into panic. Joffrey was missing. The king, if anyone still believed he was one, had vanished from his chambers. His bed untouched. No guards remembered seeing him leave, and strangely, no one looked particularly heartbroken about it. Cersei went mad. She accused Ned first, naturally, stormed into his chambers with her eyes red from sleepless rage, her voice raw. "You took my brother, and now my son. Do you want to bury the entire Lannister line?" Ned, tired and cold-eyed, stood his ground. "I didn't touch the boy. Don't lie to me." "I don't need to lie. You brought this chaos on yourself. You'll regret this," she whispered, shaking. "Even the gods can't save you now." She left behind silence and a room that suddenly felt colder than the crypts beneath Winterfell. But Joffrey hadn't been kidnapped. A raven arrived 2 days later, short, to the point, written in the jagged, arrogant hand of a boy who thought himself a god. "I ride to the Riverlands to find Sir Jaime myself. My crown is meaningless if I cannot protect my family. King Joffrey." The court was stunned. A boy king had left the capital in secret, without council or army, riding to find a brother he barely knew. The fool had taken 3 knights, 2 squires, and enough gold to buy a city, and no plan. Cersei broke entirely. She sealed herself in her chambers, refused to eat, threatened to jump from Maegor's holdfast. Her grief, already swollen from Jaime's capture, had turned into full madness now that her son was wandering a war-torn kingdom. For Ned, it was the beginning of something darker. Without Jaime, without Joffrey, Cersei's grip on power weakened. The small council grew restless. Some looked to Renly, others whispered about Stannis, and Ned, he became a symbol again. The honorable man in the den of snakes. People began visiting him again, talking in low tones, asking for guidance. "My lord," said Grandmaster Pycelle nervously one afternoon, "if the queen loses both her son and brother, the realm may demand a new regent." "I want no throne," Ned replied. "No, but your name still holds weight, especially in the north." Ned didn't answer. He couldn't shake the feeling that something worse was coming, something he couldn't see yet. Meanwhile, far away in the Riverlands, Jaime Lannister sat beneath a dead tree, chained hand and foot, surrounded by mud and men who hated him. The Brotherhood without banners had grown bolder. They didn't hide anymore. They moved like ghosts across burned villages, gathering survivors, fighting Lannister raiders, and holding trials. Beric Dondarrion stood over Jaime one night, firelight flickering on his scarred face. "You were supposed to be going." "Home," Beric said. "Why ride alone?" "I made a deal," Jaime muttered, "with a Stark. Of course it went wrong." "Tell me," Beric said, "do you ever think about the people you trampled to get your golden life?" Jaime didn't answer. He hadn't spoken much since the ambush. The chains weren't the worst part, it was the stares. The looks of loss and rage and hunger. These people didn't see a knight. They saw everything wrong with Westeros. And then came a boy. Blonde hair, dirty clothes, but eyes like wildfire. Joffrey Baratheon. Jaime stared as the boy approached. In camp, guards behind him, confident, arrogant, stupid beyond belief. "I've come for my uncle," Joffrey announced. "Release him." The Brotherhood laughed. "You?" Beric asked. "You're the king?" "By all the gods, yes," Joffrey snapped. "And I command you." "You don't command justice." Jaime tried to speak, tried to warn Joffrey, but the boy kept going. "I'll have your heads for this, all of you, Then someone struck him, a single punch. Joffrey collapsed like a sack of flour. His crown, a thin piece of gold he'd forced the blacksmith to make, fell in the mud. Beric didn't smile, didn't mock him. He just said, "Two lions in our cage and the realm out there burning." Back in King's Landing, the bells rang again. This time, they weren't signaling danger. They were signaling power, because with Joffrey and Jaime gone and Cersei locked in grief, the court had begun choosing sides, and some had chosen Ned Stark. The throne room was quieter now. No screaming king, no scheming queen, just silence and fear. The Iron Throne stood tall and cold, like a monster waiting for its next rider. In its shadow sat the small council, nervous and whispering. Renly Baratheon had returned from Highgarden with fresh roses and sharper thorns. Stannis had sent no reply, but rumours said he was gathering ships on Dragonstone. And Ned Stark, he stood at the edge of a storm. He had no desire for power, but power had started circling him anyway, like wolves around a fire. With Joffrey gone and Cersei broken, the realm was leaderless. The people in the streets were starving, the gold cloaks were restless, and the lords of the realm needed someone to blame, or someone to follow. Varys came to him one night with soft steps and sad eyes. "The game changes every hour now, Lord Stark," he said. "You may not want the crown, but soon you'll have to choose who wears it, or someone worse will take it by force." "I've already chosen," Ned said. "Stannis is Robert's true heir." "Yes, by law," Varys replied carefully. "But laws bend, swords do not." Ned narrowed his eyes. "What are you really saying?" Varys sighed. "Stannis is just, but he is not loved. The lords fear him. The small folk don't know him. He will burn the realm to keep it pure. And right now, your name carries more peace than his ever will." I am not a king. But you are the father of one. Ned froze. Varys leaned in. Robb Stark marches with an army behind him. The Riverlands already chant his name. If you name him heir, the North will follow. The Riverlands, the Vale perhaps, even the Reach if Renly stands aside. I didn't raise Robb to wear a crown, Ned said bitterly. I raised him to carry duty. Then let him carry it, Varys said, before chaos carries everything else. Meanwhile, in the Riverlands, chaos was already winning. The Brotherhood's camp was hidden among broken trees and half-burnt farms. Jaime Lannister sat in chains, and beside him on a bed of straw sat Joffrey, unconscious for 3 days. He'd woken up spitting blood, shouting for his guards, demanding punishment, threatening to burn every village from here to the Wall. But no one listened, not even Jaime. You fool, Jaime finally said when they were alone. You left the Red Keep, you abandoned the throne. For me, I'm your king, Joffrey snapped. You should thank me. I'm your uncle. Jaime muttered, and you're a child playing with dragons. Joffrey clenched his jaw. Mother would have come. She wouldn't have made it 5 miles without setting half the kingdom on fire. For once, Joffrey had no comeback. His lips trembled. They hit me. Yes, they hit the king. You deserved worse. It was the first honest conversation they ever had. The Brotherhood didn't treat them with cruelty, but they didn't bow either. Beric Dondarrion made that clear. We're not here to serve crowns, he told Jaime. We're here for justice. The kind the High Lords ignore. I gave you nothing, Jaime said coldly. No, Beric agreed, but you took everything. The mountain rides under your banner. Your house has burned and butchered the Riverlands, so you will stand trial. For what crime? For being the last name those villagers screamed before they died. Joffrey exploded again. If you touch us, my mother will flay you alive. The throne will... The throne is far, Beric said, and so is your mother. Jaime looked at the fire. He wasn't afraid of death, but he was tired. More tired than he'd ever been. You're going to start a war, he said. There's already a war, Beric replied. But maybe this time, the right people will pay the price. Back in King's Landing, the council broke. Renly made his move. Quietly, carefully, with gold from Highgarden and swords from the Reach. He walked into the throne room with 200 Tyrell guards and spoke plainly. There is no king, he said. No order, no rule. The throne must be filled before the city falls apart. And you would sit it? Sir Barristan asked. Renly shrugged. Better me than a ghost or a child. Pycelle backed him. Littlefinger smiled and said nothing. Varys watched the room like a man reading a riddle. All eyes turned to Ned. You're the only one with the name, Renly said. Robert trusted you. The North follows you. Stand with me, and we can avoid another war. But Ned didn't stand. He looked out the high windows, saw the red sky over the city, the smoke rising from the alleys, and the hungry eyes of guards, who used to wear noble colors. I won't put a flower on the throne just to stop the bleeding, he said. And what then? Renly snapped. Wait for Stannis, the man who burns gods and scares lords? It was past midnight when Ned Stark met with Varys again, this time not in his chambers, but deep beneath the Red Keep in the old tunnels built by Maegor the Cruel. The air smelled of dust and dead secrets. Rats scattered as they walked. Varys held a torch, his voice calm as always. You've made too many enemies, Lord Stark, he whispered. Even honor has limits, and you've passed them. Ned walked behind him in silence, boots echoing off the stone. You think I don't see? The piece is moving, Ned finally said. Renly wants the throne. The Tyrells stand with him. The Lannisters are bleeding but not dead. And Stannis is coming, slowly, but with fire. And in the middle, Varys murmured, stands the last honest man. Ned looked around. Why bring me here? Varys stopped at a locked iron gate. He pulled out a key from his sleeve, opened it, and led Ned into a small chamber. Inside, an old woman sat on a stone bench, pale and trembling. Her eyes were clouded, her hair white. But Ned recognized her. She had once worked in the royal nursery, back when the children were small. He remembered her face from Robert's court. She had disappeared years ago. "What is this?" Ned asked. "She was Cersei's wet nurse," Varys said softly. "She knew things the queen buried." The old woman looked up at Ned with watery eyes. "I saw her," she whispered, "when Jaime would slip into her chambers late at night. I saw her belly swell, and I saw the letters she burned." "Letters?" Ned asked, kneeling down. "She had one from Stannis," the old woman whispered. "He knew. He always knew the truth about Joffrey." Ned's stomach sank. The old woman clutched her arms. "She tried to poison me, but I ran. Varys found me. I never told anyone, not until now." Varys stepped closer. "With Joffrey gone, and Jaime in chains, the queen's lies begin to crumble. This woman's word won't save the realm, but it can tilt it." Ned stood up slowly, thoughts racing. If Stannis had proof of Joffrey's bastardy, then his claim was stronger than ever, and if that truth spread, then Cersei's last weapon, her son's crown, would mean nothing. "Why tell me this now?" Ned asked. "Because war is coming," Varys said, "and I'd rather it be fought by those who still believe in something." By morning, Ned had sent 3 ravens, one to Stannis on Dragonstone, telling him to come quickly with men and proof, one to Robb, warning him that everything was about to break, and one to the Eyrie, to Lysa Arryn, asking for neutrality, and, for safety, Sansa was to be sent to the Vale under disguise. It was the only place left that wasn't trying to wear a crown or burn one. But before he could make the arrangements, Lord Renly returned, with news that broke everything. "Your son has crossed the neck," Renly said. "Robb is marching south, and he's not coming to save the realm. He's coming to claim it." Ned felt the weight of that like a blow to the chest. "My son does not want power," Ned said. "He wants justice." "No," Renly replied. "He wants vengeance, and his bannermen want to name him king in the north." The words echoed in Ned's chest. "Not pride, not fear, something heavier, my boy," he whispered. "What have I done?" Far from the capital in the Riverlands, Jaime Lannister and Joffrey were no longer prisoners. They were fugitives. A fire had broken out during a trial, staged by the Brotherhood. Someone had slipped a blade to Jaime during the chaos. The guards were overwhelmed, and by the time the smoke cleared, both lions had vanished. Beric Dondarrion suspected a traitor in their ranks, but didn't have time to find them because the Riverlands were burning again. Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, was back, sent by Tywin, to punish every village that whispered Brotherhood or Stark. Houses were being torched, children slaughtered, and somewhere in the ashes, 2 golden-haired nobles ran for their lives. But they didn't run together. Jaime had taken a horse and ridden west. Joffrey, furious and betrayed, had disappeared into the woods with nothing but his sword and his crown. He still thought himself a king, still believed he'd be welcomed by his people, but the people remembered Wildfire and Ned's mercy. Back in King's Landing, the storm broke. The High Septon was found murdered in the streets, his head replaced by a stag's skull. Cersei finally emerged from her chambers, dressed in black with a blade at her hip and madness in her eyes. "I will burn this city," she said calmly, "before I let a Stark rule it." The gold cloaks began switching. Allegiances. Some followed Renly, others stayed loyal to Cersei. A few, just a few, swore themselves to Ned, and when the news arrived that Stannis had finally landed at Storm's End with 5,000 men, the capital split down the middle. The game had reached its breaking point, and Ned Stark stood in the center of it all. Honor cracked, daughters scattered, friends dead, enemies rising. His choice to free Jaime had saved a life. but it had also unbalanced the entire realm. And now, every crown had teeth. King's Landing was no longer a city. It was a waiting fire. Smoke drifted through the alleys. Doors stayed locked even in daylight. Merchants sold salted rat meat, and gold cloaks demanded coin for safety they never delivered. The Red Keep, once filled with laughter and whispers, had become a fortress of silence. Its halls echoed only with the clinking of armor and the footfalls of men preparing for war, and in the center of it all stood Eddard Stark. He hadn't worn his Hand's badge in days. It felt like a lie now, like a crown made of ice, melting slowly in fire. His word no longer held peace. It held weight. Weight that crushed rather than calmed. One morning, as the bells rang for an unknown funeral, Sansa was sent away in secret. She wore a servant's cloak and a ribbon in her hair, her face pale and quiet. No tears, just a nod to her father and a whisper, "Will I ever see you again?" Ned crouched beside her, placed a kiss on her forehead and said, "Not soon." But yes, it was a lie he needed to believe, even if she didn't. When the cart rolled out of the city gates with Sansa hiding beneath a pile of turnips, he felt like he had cut off his own hand to save a heart that was already bleeding. Meanwhile, ravens arrived like daggers. From the east came news of Daenerys Targaryen, the silver-haired girl who had married a Khal now dead. Her dragons, once dismissed as legend, were no longer rumor. Whispers said she had survived fire and emerged with monsters on her shoulders, a storm building far across the sea. From the south, Stannis had begun his march. He had sent letters to every lord and lady in Westeros, sealed with flame, declaring the truth. Joffrey was no son of Robert. He was a bastard born of incest, and Stannis was the one true king. The lords began choosing sides, and in the north, Robb had taken the twins by force. Lord Frey resisted, but not for long. The young wolf, as they now called him, had claimed the title King in the North. His banners flew not just in Winterfell, but in the Riverlands too. Blackfish led one flank, Greatjon Umber another, and behind them marched men who remembered what honor looked like and how it had been broken. The Starks were no longer just a house, they were a rebellion. And then came Jaime Lannister. He returned to King's Landing, battered and bruised, riding alone with a torn cloak and no armor. He entered through the back gate, dragging two heads tied to his saddle, the heads of Beric Dondarrion and Lem Lemoncloak. "He betrayed me," Jaime said, tossing them before the court. "I trusted Stark's mercy. It cost me more than chains." Ever did. Cersei embraced him before the throne, tears in her eyes, fire in her soul. With her brother beside her again, her madness sharpened. Her grief became ambition. The very next day, she named Jaime her personal champion, and her son, Joffrey Baratheon, stumbled into the capital 3 days later, half-starved, bleeding from the leg, delirious from infection. The gold cloaks barely recognized him. He had escaped a Brotherhood ambush, wandered through ravaged villages, and barely made it back alive. But when he reached the throne room, Jaime refused to kneel. "He's no king," he said, staring at Cersei. "And you know it," Cersei slapped him. "I gave up everything for you," she whispered. "Don't you dare take him from me now." Ned watched all of this in silence. The family of lions had returned to their den, but they weren't united. They were cornered, wounded, and far more dangerous. The next morning the council met, Renly still smirking, Littlefinger quiet but calculating, Varys ever watchful, Pycelle half asleep, and Ned, who knew this was likely the last meeting he'd attend. "We must choose a path," Renly said. "Stannis marches, Robb rises, and the people grow hungrier by the hour. We have a king," Cersei snapped. Joffrey sat at the end of the table, leg bandaged, eyes sunken. He hadn't spoken since returning. His crown hung crooked on his head. Ned finally spoke. "Your king sits in silence. His throne is built on lies, and the realm is breaking. Cersei stood, her voice low. "And what do you propose, Stark? That we hand it all to your son?" "No," Ned said, "that we end the blood before it drowns us all. Let the truth decide. Let the realm see the letters. Let the maesters speak. Let every house judge with open eyes." "You want to tear the veil off," she whispered. "Then prepare to watch it all burn." Jaime stepped forward. "If the truth kills the crown, maybe it deserves to die." Everyone turned to him, even Cersei. "You of all people." She whispered. "I'm tired," Jaime said. "Tired of pretending my sins are secrets." 2 days later, Ned stood in the square before the great sept, holding a scroll in one hand and a sword in the other. He read Stannis' letter aloud, before lords and peasants alike. He named the bastardy, named the incest, named the fire too. Come, the city shook with it. By nightfall, half the gold cloaks had abandoned their posts. The sept was set on fire by Lannister loyalists, and Ned Stark was marked for death again. But this time he didn't run. He sent one last raven to Robb. "The storm has broken. If I fall, do not avenge me with fire. Win with the North's heart, not its sword." That night Jaime came to Ned's chambers alone. "I owe you a truth," he said. "The last one I'll ever give." Ned looked up. "When I killed Aerys, he wasn't just mad. He had hidden wildfire beneath the city. He planned to burn it all when Robert broke through the gates. I killed him before he could speak the word." Ned stared, shocked. "No one ever asked why I broke my oath," Jaime said. "They just saw the throne and the blood." "And now?" Ned asked. Jaime sighed. "Now I've done worse things. In the name of love." They stood in silence. One man, broken by honor. The other, by the lack of it. By dawn, King's Landing was a battlefield of whispers and knives, but for once the truth had been spoken, and in the end, that truth did what swords never could. It changed everything.